Word Up Vinyl community, Midge here, a guy in a hat who likes to talk about records. And I was just thinking, I haven't shown you my R's for ages. It must be before Christmas, so I thought I'd better get onto it. And basically, that's my recent repetitive rotations. All the stuff I've been listening to, well, since the middle of December, really, up until February, which we are now. And I've got 10 albums to show you. 10. And before I descend into waffledom, which is what I tend to do, I'm going to try and speed through them really quickly so you're not, watching an hour video or whatever. So let's get straight on with it. And the first one I've been listening to is a soul masterpiece. I've really been enjoying this. And it's taken me ages to track down a copy. And it's just such a hard record to find in good condition, and it's often dismissed or not talked about, but I think it's great. And it's the Jackson 5's 1973 album Get It Together. And it's, a lot of people just dismiss it because it's a Jackson 5 and they think, bubblegum pop sort of thing. But it's not, because even the Jacksons by 1973 were thinking we need to shed this sort of teeny bop image and, the bubblegum pop image we've got. And they wanted to go in the psychedelic soul direction that the Temptations had gone in and the Undisputed Truth. So obviously they were listening a lot to Norman Whitfield's productions. And this is why I love this album. They try to go down that psychedelic soul route, and obviously there's some Norman Whitfield songs on here, so you can tell they're definitely going for that sort of direction. The reason why this album is so hard to find is because it's die cut, and it's die cut in the letters. As you can see, this isn't a perfect copy, but it's the best I've seen for a long time, so I thought I'd pick it up. And the great thing about this is obviously this slides out, and you've got the picture of the Jacksons there. Michael Jackson was 14 when this album came out, so his voice, his privates were dropping, so his voice was changing, and that was one of the reasons why they wanted to shed that image. But on this album, all the brothers share the vocals, so that was another new thing as well. And also, if you take that away, it just says Git, which is an added bonus as well. So yeah, this album's got some absolutely great tracks on it. It's got Too Late to Change the Time, which is a great ballad. And it's a cover of Diana Ross and the Supremes' Reflections, which doesn't work as well. But the where this stands out is the extended psychedelic soul songs. So you've got Mama, I Got a Brand New Thing, which I think is a Norman Whitfield song that they've covered. Hum Along and Dance is probably the most famous track on this album because it goes on for about 10 minutes and it's just a great psychedelic soul type funk workout, and it's absolutely superb. It's worth the price of admission alone to get that track. You've got Get It Together, another cover of another Motown classic, You Need Love Like I Do, Don't You? And the song Dancing Machine, which is also a great track as well. But yeah, it's an absolute belter of an album. Don't dismiss it as a Jackson, a typical Jackson 5 album, because it isn't. It's great. Like I say, it's got that sort of swampy type psychedelic soul production that Norman Whitfield was mastering at the time. So this is definitely an album to look out for. And like I said, I've been playing this non-stop since I got it, just in the middle of December, I think I got it. But yeah, this cover will do until a better one comes along. But like I say, it's so hard to find one in good condition. But yeah, if you see this, pick it up. It's an absolutely great album. Jackson 5's 1973, Get It Together. Next up, two albums that I've been listening to recently that coincidentally, I think, have a lot in common. They're both big acts, but they were both probably past their peak and their heyday. And they recorded around the same time, and they were both recorded in America, and they had a lot of influences from American music. So it was a bit of a change in direction for both acts. And it's 1975 T-Rex's Bolan Zip Gun and 1976's Slade with Nobody's Fools. Now, like I say, both bands are probably past the peak at that stage, and they both took influences from America. So, starting with Bolan Zip Gun, I think this was his 10th album, which is incredible, really. He did churn them out, didn't he, Mark Bolan? But Mark Bolan was in that difficult situation where I think he was written off by the UK music press at the time. They were calling him a has-been and formulaic, which he was to some extent. And Bolan didn't really know what to do. So, when he tried to do something a bit different, like he did with the album before this, Zinc Alloy, people didn't like it, but they didn't like it when he stuck to his guns and did his formulaic glam rock. So he felt like he couldn't really win, but he ploughed on regardless. And this album was made when he moved to America. His girlfriend at the time, Gloria Jones, was added to the band, so this was a lot more of like a soul funk direction. So he still had his glam rock guitar type things, but you had Gloria Jones as sort of like funky clavinet playing and soulful backing vocals. So there's a heavy soul influence on this album. But to be honest with you, I really like it. I've been really enjoying this. Like I say, I don't have a lot of Bolan's later albums. I think he only made 2 more after this before he died. But there's some great tracks on here. There's obviously the single Light of Love, which I think was the first T-Rex single that didn't go top 20. So, he was on the downward trajectory at this point. You've got Precious Star, Space Boss, which is a great song. And, people accuse Mark Bolan of being repetitive. Ought to listen to the lyrics to this song because they're fantastic. So I've got them here. So you've got Space Boss, Are You the Space Boss? Space Boss, Will You See Me at Any Cost? And then it goes on to the chorus. Are you now? Are you now the Space Boss? So, that sort of, criticism that's levelled at Bolan is ridiculous. But it worked for him, didn't it? It really worked for him. Repetitive lyrics worked for him. They just did. And you didn't really question it because the tunes were so good. But like, you've got some great songs on here. You've got Till Dawn, which really heavily leans on the backing soulful vocals of Gloria Jones. You've got Girl in the Thunderbolt Suit. I Really Love You, Babe. It's just, I really like it. It's a great album. And like I say, it was a gap. And I've mentioned this album before because I picked it up a while ago, but I've only just started listening to it because I wanted the die-cut cover, which is really hard to find on an original. This obviously isn't an original. It's a reissue on the Fat Possum label. So is that an Australian label? Don't want to be stereotypical, but it might be. And like I say, took a lot of influence for American soul music, so that's the direction Bolan went in. I don't think it won him any more fans or critics. I don't think the album did particularly well, and the single certainly didn't do well. So, a brave change in direction maybe, but it is more stripped back than the previous one. He used a lot of strings on Zinc Alloy, and I think he stripped them back. So it is quite funky, it's quite rocky, and I've been enjoying this, to be honest with you. And then moving on to Slade's Nobody's Fools, that was similar in terms of, I think Slade had thought that they'd done all they could in the UK around this point. So they fancied a fresh challenge, which was probably a good thing to do. And they wanted to break America. So they actually the band members moved to New York in 75, I think, and basically headlined for every American large act that was going, supported every large, like Aerosmith and bands like that, willing to start at the bottom and work their way up again. And this album was recorded in America, and I think they took the time over. They didn't rush into anything. So obviously, it was a concerted effort to break America. Unfortunately, it turned out it didn't really work, and they ended up back in the UK a couple of years later. But this album was the result of it. And again, it sort of draws heavily on American soul music. So again, you've got Tasha Thomas was a name that they hired. They hired a soul singer to do the backing vocals on this album. It's the first time a female voice had been on a Slade record. And again, it does work. There is that influence there. It doesn't go as heavy-handed as perhaps Bolan did, but it's definitely something that stands out, and it's definitely an American influence they took. But there's some great rockers on here as well, your typical Slade rockers. You've got the title track, Nobody's Fool. You've got Do the Dirty, which is, it is down and dirty, it's sort of like cool guitar riffs. You've got Get On Up, which is another great rocker. Scratch My Back, and All the World Is a Stage, which is it's a superb song that closes the album, because bizarrely for Slade they used synths on it, and it's just a great song. But again, a band that took heavy influences from America, so they were following the same route as T-Rex really. So I would recommend it. It was one of the later Slade albums, obviously, and they came back to the UK in time for punk, and I think their sort of career fizzled out really until the 80s when they became like, champions of rock again, and they made a couple of more decent albums in the 80s. But like I said, this was a gap in my collection. I managed to pick up this in the sale after Christmas. It's not an original. It's on this cool splatter red vinyl, which I really like. And yeah, it was a gap, so it's a nice gap to fill. But like I say, both those albums have a lot in common. But I would recommend both of them, even though they are later albums. I've enjoyed both of them. So yeah, I recommend you pick those up if you see them cheap. So yeah, Slade, Nobody's Fools, and T-Rex, Bolan, Zip Gum. Next, I've got a couple of Blue Note albums I've been playing a lot recently, and the first one is from 1969, and it's Stanley Turrentine's Common Touch featuring Shirley Scott. Shirley Scott was an organist and was married to Stanley at the time of recording this album, and this is one of those sort of sweet spot Blue Note albums for me in terms of, if you're not a jazz lover, don't be put off. It's one of those sort of really sort of cool, smooth jazz albums. So a lot of soul in it, a lot of soul in Shirley Scott's organ playing. Obviously, Stanley Turrentine's, was a fantastic sax player. And yeah, it's one of those sort of Blue Note albums that's quite funky at times. It starts off with Buster Brown, which is a great upbeat number. And you've got a cover of Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind, which seems a bit of an odd choice, but it's all right. But there's a cover of Lonely Avenue as well. That is absolutely superb, really soulful, really sort of, slowed down and really melodic, really nice. You've got a Shirley Scott original on here called Boogaloo. That's a funky organ track. And it's just one of those sort of laid back, smooth, plenty of melody, nothing angular, nothing that's going to put you off. So even if you don't like jazz, these the early 60s and 70s Blue Note albums, they've just got that soulful touch in them as well. It's not just jazz, it's about melody, it's about soul. And this is a great one. It's a really laid back, late night listening type affair, and it's got loads of melody in it and loads of funky organs. So highly recommend that. So that's Stanley Turrentine's Common Touch. Next up, another favourite Blue Note artist of mine, and it's Donald Byrd. And Donald Byrd's Places and Spaces is one of my all-time favourite Blue Note albums. It's just sublime. And this other album I've been after for years, and I just couldn't get a copy of it. The prices were just ridiculous. But fortunately, in this new Blue Note reissue campaign, they've just reissued it. And this is almost as good as Places and Spaces. And it's from 1974, and it's Stepping Into Tomorrow. And it's one of those sort of like Blue Note sweet spot albums for me in terms of it's funky, it's soulful, it's jazz, but it's just sublime. It's produced by is it the Mizzle Brothers, or is it just... No, it's Larry Mizzle of the Mizzle Brothers produces it. And Larry and Phonce Mizzle was sort of like... They were involved with Motown for a bit, and they made a lot of... They became like a production team, and they made a lot of albums for Blue Note in which they had a lot of soul and funk to Blue Note artists, and Donald Byrd was one of them. And it's just sublime. I can't recommend this album highly enough. Like I say, Places and Spaces is phenomenal, but this is almost as good. It's most famous for the track Think Twice, which has been sampled to death by hip-hop artists. Were Quest the ones that did it first? I'm not sure, but on... Low End Theory. But it's, as soon as you hear it, check out Think Twice if you've never heard it. Really cool sort of female soulful vocals over it, and that you'll recognise the break straight away. And it's such a sublime song in its own right, but that break is superb. But this is one of those albums where it's sort of, like I say, it introduces soul into jazz. So a lot of these tracks have either male or female vocals, adding sort of like, not particularly songs, but like repeated refrains, which really sort of, lift the tracks. So you've got like Stepping Into Tomorrow, which opens the album. That's sort of like, has almost like a gospel edge in a way. But all these like funky musicians in the background, and you've got these soulful vocals coming in. And there's so many cool tracks on here. Designer Nation is great. Rock and Roll Again is a great stripped down ballad. But like I said, they're not actually songs. They're more like repeated vocal refrains over sort of smooth jazz backings, but they're funky as well. And there's some great musicians on here as well. There's Donald Byrd. I mean, look at that cheeky face and that jacket as well. Spot on. But you've got people like Gary Bartz, you've got Chuck Rainey on bass, David Walker on guitar, Fons Mizzle on clarinet, Harry Mason on drums. It's just sublimely made. It's just one of those albums. It's just, late night listening. Oh, it's just, I've been playing this over and over again. And like I say, I thought, Places and Spaces was good, but Stepping Into Tomorrow, oh, absolutely amazing. But Donald Byrd, I need to get more of his 70s albums because everything I've heard has been superb. But yeah, Donald Byrd, Stepping Into Tomorrow on Blue Note from 1974. Please check this out. It's phenomenal. Great album. Even if you don't like jazz, check it out. Oh, I just want to say as well for all you purists out there, the last two Blue Note albums are on the classic Blue Note series, and they were both mastered by Kevin Gray on The Thighs of a Virgin. Okay, so next up, I've got another sort of collection of albums I could lump together, and that's four disco albums. Whoa, where are you going? Disco's great. Oh, I don't understand people who don't like disco. Disco's fantastic. And I made a video a while ago in January about how bad January was and all the sort of angular and atonal music I listen to. But I don't just listen to that in January. I think you do need a bit of a pick-me-up as well. So that's where disco comes in. Because, disco albums, always upbeat, always make you think of Saturday night and having a good time. So I've been listening to these four disco albums, which I'll go through now. This one needs no introduction, really. It's Donna Summer's I Remember Yesterday from 77. I'm not going to talk about this much, other than the fact it's a classic. It's another one of her albums she made with Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellotti. And just such a great, partnership. All three of them made some absolutely classic songs and classic disco. So this one's from 77. It's got I Remember Yesterday on it, obviously the title track, and it's got Love's Unkind on it, which is an absolute banger in my opinion. And there's like a loose concept behind this album in which they were trying to do like music from every decade. So there was 40s music, 50s music, 60s music, and obviously the album ends with I Feel Love, which was like a nod to the future. And just quickly on that, because it's been talked about so many times, but I always think Donna Summer's not given the credit she should be for that song, because obviously got an amazing sort of high energy sort of synthesizer type arrangement, all circular rhythms, and loads of analog synths, and that absolutely groundbreaking. But her vocal melody in that song is superb. I just think if somebody came up to you and presented you with that as an instrumental and said write a song around it, I don't think you'd 9 times out of 10 you'd come up with what Donna Summer came up with for that vocal melody. And I think it's astonishing, and it really does add to the uniqueness of the track. So you've got a unique vocal melody and a unique backing track. So I think it was a great sort of combination and something that she's not given a lot of credit for. But yeah, classic disco. You can't really go wrong. You can find this in any sort of charity shop around. It's not particularly rare or high priced, but it's definitely worth having in the collection. And the same could be said about this one. Again, an absolute classic disco album, and it's Miko's Galactic Funk. Star Wars, another Galactic Funk album from 77, of course, when Star Wars came out. And Miko was a producer. And apparently, when Star Wars was released, he went to the cinema 4 times over the weekend to see it. Now, whether or not that was because of that white dress Princess Leia wore, or whether it because he saw something in the music, I think it was the music, although it probably, it was a close thing, I think. But he thought, disco's big now. Why don't we combine the score, which he was obviously impressed with disco? So he went to Neil Bogart of Casablanca Records, who obviously was a huge disco label at the time, presented the idea, and he said, go for it. So this was the result, and it was a million seller back in 1977. Obviously, with the Star Wars phenomenon helped it. And obviously disco helped it as well, so it's still a classic in my eyes. It's got it's that full 15 minutes of all those sort of like main themes in Star Wars cleverly sort of sequenced together and made into a disco medley. So you could dance for 15 minutes until, you wore out, or somebody shot you with a phaser or something like that, or chopped your head off with a lightsaber. But yeah, absolute classic album. Obviously, it spawned the single "The Cantina Band," which was the famous sort of melody they played in the band that Luke visited with Ben. And it's still, I think, the highest selling instrumental record of all time, which goes to show, doesn't it? Miko was obviously onto something, and yeah, I love this album. Obviously, it's dated from the Star Wars themes, but it's so cleverly put together. All those themes sort of successfully sort of merged together, and it's credit to obviously to John Williams' original score as well. How memorable it is, and every sort of tune on here you will recognise because it's that ingrained in our generation, I suppose. But yeah, absolutely classic. It outsold the actual Star Wars score, apparently. And the B side is three other sort of disco tracks split into Other Galactic Funk, which ties in with the title. Obviously, not as impressive. It's got quite a military sort of feel to it. But obviously, it's the A side that everyone goes for. And I still think it's a classic. I'm not sure whether that cover sort of really did it justice, but I presume there was lots of legalities about what they could and couldn't put on the cover. But yeah, on the classic orange RCA label, it's not that difficult to find. But they did actually put a lot of money into it. If you look at the musician credits, it's almost like an orchestra. So they did actually plough a lot of money into it. And obviously used a full orchestra, obviously speeded up and slowed down at some points as well. And another interesting thing I find about this album is they weren't allowed to use the sounds in the film like blasters and R2D2 and the lightsabers. So they had to be recreated themselves on a synthesizer. And the person they brought in to do that was Suzanne Kiani, who was like a very famous sort of video games music maker in the 70s, and also a pioneer of the bookless synthesizer, which was used on countless records. And she's one of those artists that were a bit under the radar, but in the last sort of 10 years, Finders Keepers Records have issued a lot of her stuff. And it's superb. She was obviously a master synthesizer player and very underrated. But yeah, she recreated all the sound effects on here using a synthesizer. So I like that. But yeah, classic disco album. I've been listening to that a lot and running around making Chewbacca noises. The next album, again, worthy of picking up. This is Sheila and B Devotion, King of the World, from I think it was from 1980. And the reason why I picked this out is Sheila was just I think she was she a German singer? Jumped on the disco craze, but it's sort of like an anomaly, this album, because it's actually all about Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers, because they produced it and they wrote all the songs for it. So I know it sounds a bit disrespectful, but Sheila B isn't particularly noteworthy for this album. It's more about the fact that Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chic produced this album and wrote all the songs for it. And amazingly, they were that on a high. This came out in 1980, and they also produced three other albums for other artists that same year, including the massive Diana album for Diana Ross. So they made 4 albums in a year, and this one I think is worthy of attention because it's not like your normal Chic productions. There's a lot more guitar in here, oddly enough. So there's lots of big guitar riffs. There's lots of great guitar solos in it, and it's quite rocky. Obviously, it's disco as well, but for Chic, it's quite rocky, quite a sort of like a rock edge production. And there's some great songs on here. Obviously, Spacer is the famous song off here, and that's still an absolute disco classic. But you've got other great songs like Mayday, Charge Plates and Credit Cards, which is a great song about getting into debt with all this sort of plastic. You've got King of the World, is the title track is great. Don't Go, and Misery, which is probably the most upbeat song you'll ever hear about being totally miserable. And honestly, this if you see this cheap, and it usually is cheap, pick it up, and especially if you're a fan of Chic or Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers, because it's a great production. I don't think Sheila made another album after this, and Be Devotion, strange name, were her backing band, but I think they only dance, because you can't hear any sort of male backing vocals on this album really. So I think they were just basically her dancers. So whatever happened to Be Devotion, is one of the questions of our age. But I'm not really bothered about finding out, to be honest. But yeah, it's not about Sheila particularly. It's about the production and the songs, and it's a superb album. The songs are great on it, and this is a 40th anniversary red vinyl edition that I got. Again, cheap as chips in a sale. But yeah, it's a great album. If you like disco and you like Chic, pick this up. Every song's great. It really is great. And the last disco one is another classic. Another one I got in the sales after Christmas. And this is Sylvester's 1978 album, Step 2. Obviously, it has the classic "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real" on it, and just another disco classic. Obviously, I'm not going to go into Sylvester's backstory, because you can look into it. But very interesting character. He could sing in high falsetto. He also had a low register as well. And this album is a mixture of sort of like, obviously, upbeat, high energy disco songs, but also there's some very sort of stripped back, soulful type songs on here as well. So obviously, he did fancy himself as a soul singer as well. And the soul songs on here are superb as well. There's a 7-minute version of a Bacharach and David tune on here called "I Took My Strength From You," which is really cool. Was It Something That I Said is a great song as well, another great soul ballad. Obviously, you've got Dance Disco Heat, which is another great high energy disco song on it. And there's a reprise of You Make Me Feel Mighty Real on here, which is apparently how Sylvester actually imagined it. So the first version on this album is like the, 7-8 minute high energy disco version that we all know. But the reprise is sort of like, he imagined it as a slow ballad. So even though it's a reprise, it's a totally different version, a shorter version, but it's really interesting to see, both sides of the same song. And it was produced by Harvey Fuqua of Motown Records. And yeah, it's just another great disco album. And also what's interesting about this is his backing singers. I'll try to remember what their names are, but let's have a look. That's it. Izora Rhodes and Martha Walsh, and they were better known as 2 Tons of Fun, because they were, shall we say, large ladies. I mean, you'd never get away with that now, would you, calling them 2 Tons of Fun? And I think they actually made some albums of their own. But what's generous about this album is how heavily they're featured on Sylvester's record. I mean, some tracks they more or less take over the vocal. So it did give them a lot of time and space on this album, which obviously led to their career. And they were more famously known in the 80s. They changed the name to the Weather Girls, and he had the huge hit "It's Raining Men." But back then they were 2 Tons of Fun, which you can't do now. You can't do that. But yeah, it's a great album. There's not many tracks on it, but obviously because a lot of them are extended. But it's a great disco album. It's well worth searching out. You've got high energy disco, you've got soulful ballads, and also it's notable because Patrick Cowley plays on this as well. Patrick Cowley obviously being one of the famous high energy disco producers of the 70s, a wizard on synthesizers. And apparently it was him that said to Sylvester, "Look, if you speed up You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, I could make it into a banging disco tune for you." Which he did, and he got the credit in the sleeve notes for doing that. And yeah, Patrick Cowley made some great solo albums of his own as well during the 70s, and a bit of a pioneer himself. But Sylvester, yeah, he's got a really interesting backstory if you look into it. But I'm not going to that right now. But again, classic song, classic album, and I picked this up in the sales again. I think it was on Craft. Craft reissued it. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's a nice version, but it was really expensive. But I managed to get a copy in the sales. It was originally issued on Fantasy. Craft have reissued it on this sort of glitter vinyl edition, which is nice. and yeah, managed to get it in the sales, so at a great price. So yeah, really pleased to pick that up. So that's Sylvester Step 2, and that's the 4 disco albums I've been listening to recently. Lastly, but by no means leastly, this is something I pulled out recently for nostalgia purposes, and I've been listening to it quite a bit. And it's from 1988, and it's MC Duke's Organised Rhyme. Now, MC Duke was a big player at the time in terms of UK hip hop. There weren't many UK hip hop artists around at the time. Obviously, he was highly sort of influenced by American rappers and things like that. So he was a big light in terms of UK hip hop. He had a very commanding voice. He was really great at rhyming. And at the time, hip hop's a lot more diverse now. And it's not as fast as it used to be. Now, in my day, when I was a kid, hip hop was all about break beats and how hard the beats were and how fast your rhymes were. So this is one of those albums where it's a blast from start to finish. It's all great big break beats. It's all fast rhyming, and unusually MC Duke, he was influenced by American rappers, but he did have a very English type voice. He was from London. And a lot of the songs are about things that were going on in the UK at the time. So he wasn't trying to be American. He was like forging a path. He was trying to make a claim to be a UK hip hop artist. Along with his DJ Leader One, and the producer Simon Harris, they made this album, and it's great. And it reminds me, I was 15 when this came out. I remember listening to this on my paper round, and it just makes you think, where's the time gone? Especially in terms of the fact that MC Duke has passed away, is no longer with us. And I only found out when I was looking at this album again that Simon Harris, who was very inspirational in UK hip-hop circles at the time, he started the Music for Life record label in the UK. He produced a lot of the songs on this album. He was known as quite a good producer. And he made a series of sort of scratches and breakbeat albums, instrumental loops and breakbeats, which were hugely influential at the time. He passed away in February this year, just now. So it makes me feel very, very old, to be honest with you. But like I say, I pull this out and I'm 15 and I'm on my paper round, on my bike, and without a care in the world, and pretending I'm some sort of, hip-hop luminary and rhyming along and things like that. So it's a great nostalgia piece for me. But yeah, great album. Like I say, it was spotted by Derek B, who was another big name in UK hip hop circles and on the Music of Life label. And he brought him to the attention of Simon Harris, who signed him to the label, and they made this album, which made quite a splash at the time. Lots of great break beats, lots of great samples, and yeah, just a great nostalgia trip for me. So I've been playing that. I love old school hip hop because it came out at the time. That was my time. So I always go back to old school hip hop. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. But on a side note, if you ever spot this, which is the Final Conflict 12-inch single by MC Duke. It wasn't featured on the album, but it's an absolutely classic UK hip-hop track. And as you can see, it's all about horror. It samples the Omen film. Obviously, there's some spoken word samples from there. It also samples speech from RoboCop, which was a big film at the time. And it's just a great track. It also samples Peter Gabriel's Games Without Frontiers, which was odd, but it's such an absolute banger of a track. And obviously it's back with one of his famous songs, I'm Riffin', but there's a remix of that on the B-side, which is just as great. It's an absolutely fantastic remix. So if you ever see that in the 12-inch racks, snap it up, because it's a superb track, and it isn't on that album, but it's an absolutely dope beat, as the kids would say. Absolutely slamming. So yeah, that's my R's for these last couple of months, and finishing on MC Duke. And I have sort of ventured into the realms of Waffledon, so this has gone on a little bit, which I apologise for. But if you made it this far, well done, and I'll see you on the next video. See you later.